We have a very special guest. As many of you know, it is the 20th anniversary of the conviction in the Simpson trial. It's one of the most talked about trials to this day. But we're not going to talk about that tonight because we're going to have Denise Brown come up and we're going to talk about her sister, Nicole Brown Simpson. And we're going to talk about some of the things that she learned as a result of what happened to her sister. And so Denise, if you can come up onto the stage. Really honored to have her here. She is an incredible speaker, an incredible voice for domestic violence the last 20 years. Denise, thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you. And you know what? This is such an amazing cause and a worthwhile cause and something that I myself didn't know anything about. So,
you know, Denise, something that you have said before when I've heard you speak is that so often when we talk about victims, we say, why didn't they leave? Why didn't they ask for help? And you say, that's not the right question to be asking.
It really isn't. Because the question that we should be asking is, why are they hitting? Why are they talking down to your partner? Why is it that they have the victim, and this is what I hear all across the country, why do we have to leave our homes? And so I think what we need to do is we really need to start turning those words around and not be victims anymore and actually be the survivors and the strong people that we were before we got into these abusive relationships.
Something else very interesting is that you had really relatively no idea what your sister was going through.
None. I had zero knowledge of domestic violence because we weren't brought up like that. My parents never screamed at each other. They never yelled. You never saw anybody hitting each other. I mean, there was respect in my parents' relationship, so that's how we were raised. And to realize after my sister was murdered that, she was in this horrific relationship with this man that actually spent 17 years of his life with our family was like the worst thing in the world for me. The day that we got that phone call, or my mom got that phone call, was 6:15 in the morning, and I can still remember it because I remember hearing this scream from deep down inside my mother that I had never ever heard before, and I just thought, I ran back to her room and I said, oh my God, I said, what's going on? She was up on her knees with the phone in her hand. My dad was on his elbow, and she says to me, she goes, your sister's been murdered. And I said, what? And I went there, and I grabbed the phone because I thought this is the worst prank anybody could ever play. And I grabbed the phone, and I said, who is this? I said, what are you talking about? And he says, this is Detective Tom Lang, and your sister's been murdered. And I said, oh, my God. And at that moment, I had flashes of, he did it. He finally did it. And why my brain went there, I don't know. And the interesting thing is because we never saw it, never heard of it, never knew anything about it. And when I started reading her notes and diaries, which was, I don't know, about a month later, all of a sudden I said, oh my God, we were there at these places where the abuse was occurring. We were there. We were there. We were there. And I just thought, well, I asked all the why questions. I took these diaries and I went to a shelter and I said, what is this all about? And they started educating me about domestic violence. They started telling me about the cycle of domestic violence, the power and control of one human being over the other, the verbal, the emotional, the psychological abuse, the put downs, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're worthless, you're no good, and which escalates into the physical violence of the hitting, the kicking, the punching, the throwing up against walls. And then if a victim is lucky enough to survive that abuse, then there's the honeymoon phase of the, oh baby, I'm so sorry, and the gifts and the flowers and the excuses. Well, it's that cycle of violence that I knew nothing about. But it's that cycle of violence that I testified to. Once I realized what it was and I started educating myself, they put me up on the stand and they said, Denise, we need you to talk about domestic violence. I said, but I am no expert in domestic violence. I don't know anything about it. I was just educating myself as well. So it just brings me back to the pictures and seeing pictures in my sister's bathroom drawer when she was really young. And I looked at it, and I picked it up, and I looked at it, I go, oh my God, that is an amazing, I said, what happened to you? Yeah, it was a black eye. It was when she was very young. And all of a sudden she says, oh my God, wasn't that terrific? The makeup studio, the makeup artist at the studio painted a black eye on me. And I said, oh my God, it looked so real. And I threw that picture right back in the drawer. We didn't live life like that. And then I had to testify to an incident. I thought it was an isolated incident. And the reason I thought it was an isolated incident is because we were drinking. We were having a good time. We were partying. And it was fun. And I said, me, you take my sister for granted. All hell broke loose. He started running up the stairs, and the pictures that actually flew down into the foyer was our family. I didn't put two and two together. I thought, oh my God, the guy is crazy. He flipped out. He had Nicole by her neck up against the wall, about this far off the ground. And I was screaming, I was hitting, I was trying to do everything in my power to get him off of her. And then he ended up throwing us out of the house. And once that happened, I took her to a hotel. And the next day she says to me, she goes, Denise, I have to go get clothes. I said, okay, I'm coming with you. You know, big sister here, I have to protect, right? So I said, well, I'm going with you. She says, no, don't worry about it. She goes, because he's not going to be there anyway. I said, okay. So she left. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours go by, and I'm like, I call her up. I go, Nick, I said, what is going on? Where are you? And she says, Denise, everything's okay. He came back. Everything's fine. You know, it just kind of got out of control. And I was like, oh, okay. If everything is fine, everything is okay. You know, mind you, we were less than two years apart in age. So we spoke about everything as we were growing up. And the boys that we dated, the little secrets that we always had. So why wouldn't Nicole be okay? Why would she tell me she was okay if she wasn't? Because that's who we were. We were like this. And even to this day, our friends always said, you know, these girls that we grew up with, they said, you know, if one of them was mad at you, the other one was mad at you. That's just the way we were. So knowing about domestic violence was not in our vocabulary, had no clue.
You mentioned some of the things that you witnessed, but looking back now, what are the warning signs you learned you had no idea to put two and two together?
You fat pig, when she was pregnant with their son. And I thought that one really resonated with me because she was such a beautiful girl. She was such a beautiful woman and had a heart of gold. So for her to call her a fat pig when she was carrying his child, I thought, you're disgusting. You're a despicable individual. And I didn't understand why she would want to stay in a relationship like that. It's like, God, Nick, you're so much better than that. Why do you want to be with somebody like that? You're stupid. Why are you doing that? She was never isolated, though. Isolation being a huge part of this cycle of domestic violence. But my sister was never isolated. She was always able to come down, to come and visit her family. We were always together at affairs, at dinners. We always did things together until that last night before her murder. He was not invited to come to dinner with us. And the last thing that I said to my sister was, Nick, I love you. And that's something I have not been able to say in 22 years because this thing called domestic violence and power and control and jealousy, if I can't have her, nobody can. This monster took my sister from her family and from her friends. And so I understand now, because I've traveled so much, and I understand the victims that are in the shelters, and they're running for their lives, and they're scared to death. And when somebody calls 911, it's like the last-stitch effort to have somebody believe them or believe that there's actually something serious going on. And that's why now there is not one person that comes up to me and says, I've been there, that was me, and I turn away because I say, oh, I don't believe you, because it's the hardest thing in the world for a victim to come up and to let anybody know or to ask for help. So never, ever, ever turn your back. Be supportive. Be there for your friend or your loved one that's going through this, because statistics show 7 to 10 times they go back to that abuser before they actually leave their violent relationship. So for us, as friends, we need to learn, I believe, everything we possibly can about the cycle of domestic violence, about how it affects family, friends, how it affects them. Learn everything you possibly can, because that's exactly what I did. I mean, I just decided to, this is something that I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I was going to just educate myself and learn everything. And the greatest, I think, accomplishment of all of this that I believe I have been a part of was passing the Violence Against Women Act. And the Violence Against Women Act is something that is so important. When our now Vice President, I'm sorry I'm doing all the talking.
Hey, you go for it.
But our now Vice President, Joe Biden, he was a senator at the time, and him and Orrin Hatch, Senator Orrin Hatch, they co-authored this bill called the Violence Against Women Act. And when Nicole was murdered, Joe Biden called me up and he said, Denise, I would love you to come and testify in front of Congress, because the Violence Against Women Act is stalled in Senate appropriations. Because people used to think it only happened to poor and homeless people. Domestic violence can't happen to anybody of any means or a middle class or upper wealthy family. God forbid, this doesn't exist in our neighborhoods. I'm sure we've all heard that. So, so when he asked me to come out there and to testify, my friend Shakti, she was with me, and she's here tonight. And hey, she was my rock. Everybody thought she was my bodyguard. But what happened was, and it was really great, because what we decided to do, and I think it made all the difference in the world, we decided to name names. There were senators that decided that they didn't care about women. And we decided that, you know what? We're going to call them out, because women are so important. Your mothers, your daughters, your aunts, everyone is so important. They have babies, for God's sakes. Come on. We continue, we continue life on this planet. So, I thought it was really important for us to say, this guy, this senator, he doesn't want to help his mom. He doesn't want to help his daughter. He doesn't want to help his aunt or his sister, for that matter. And we named 11 senators. And it was really one of the most rewarding and wonderful experiences, because we didn't have to worry about, do we care what people think? Do we care if we're liked or not liked? No, because it wasn't about being liked or not liked. It was about saving lives. And that's what we ended up doing. And we ended up getting more money. And the shelter funding went from $18 to $32 million, which was awesome. And law enforcement was actually able to go in and do something. And remember Polaroid cameras? Every police department got a Polaroid camera, because they could go and they could take pictures. Instead of just telling the police just to go take a walk around the block, they were able to take pictures right then and there at the moment. And they were able to come back. So that's just one part of the Violence Against Women Act that I was a part of, which I just am so proud of. But there's so many amazing things that people do, like this event. It's educating people, it's talking to people, it's spreading the word. And I always say, let's tell two friends. You tell 2 friends, I'll tell 2 friends, you tell 2 friends, you tell 2 friends. And next year, this will be double in size, quadruple in size, and we just keep growing this event and making it bigger and bigger and educating more and more people.
You know, there are so many people, as you mentioned, that wait so long to come forward. It is probably one of the hardest things to do. There could be someone in this room right now.
Yeah.
And what is your message to them?
If they hit you once, they will hit you again. And if they ever threaten to kill you, eventually one day they will. So get out. Find a safe place. Because you're not alone. There's so much support out there for you. And never, ever, ever think you're alone. Men. I have to talk about men as well, because at the very beginning, 22 years ago, men were not a part of this conversation. They weren't allowed to be. I was told, don't talk about men. Don't talk about alcohol. Don't talk about drugs. Don't talk about any of that stuff because it's a woman's issue. I was like shocked because when I went to Canada a few years later, they told me, they called it a woman issue. And I could not get behind it's a woman issue. And every time we went on the radio or we went on TV, I said, no, it's not just a woman's issue. It's everyone's issue. It's a societal issue. Everybody needs to be involved.
Well, Denise, I want to thank you so much for taking your time to share your incredible story and really a lot of words of wisdom. We do have a small surprise for you that I'd like to share with you. And there's a curriculum that maybe you can tell everyone here about. It's called Hands Are Not for Hitting.
It's the best. Gosh, it is such a great curriculum. Hands Are Not for Hitting. I learned about it at the very beginning when I first went to the shelter, and they told me about this amazing program. It's out of Minnesota, the Minnesota Coalition for Battered Women. And what a child does, they place their hand on a piece of paper. Well, there's a curriculum, kindergarten through 3rd, and then 4th through 6th. But one part of it that I absolutely loved was the child places their hand on a piece of paper, they color it whatever colors they want to, and they take a pledge. Hands are not for hitting. Words are not for hurting. My hand will not commit violence. It is so wonderful. I love this program. We did it with my son. We did it with my sister's kids, Sydney and Justin. We did it with my other sister's son, Aaron, and a few of their friends. And all of a sudden, I started getting back like rainbow-colored hands, yellows, reds, rainbows, all these bright colors, until I looked at Justin's hand. And Justin's hand was a hand with a black crayon scratched across the hand with a tiny little red heart right in the center. And I said, uh-oh. So I called up their therapist because as soon as they moved down, they started seeing someone so that they could talk about what was going on. And I called him up and I said, Ken, what does this mean? And he says, Denise, you have a little boy there with a broken heart. Killed me, broke my heart, but as soon as the kids were roughhousing, because there was 3 boys and 1 girl under the same roof, as soon as they started roughhousing and running around, pillow fights or whatever, as soon as I would walk in the door, the first person that said, hey guys, stop, Denise is here, hands are not for hitting, was Justin. And when I called him, which was when he was, when he was about 20 years old, I said, Justin, do you remember that program? And he goes, yeah, Denise, I do. And I asked my son the same question. And he said, you know what, Mom? He goes, I wish you would have done that for me every year. Just done that and keep that going. So now when I go to shelters and there's little kids there, we always do Hands Are Not for Hitting. They do it as young as even preschool when they do murals. So it's a program that I think should be in every school system. And if it's not in every school system, go do it with your grandkids, do it with your little sisters, go do it with your nieces and nephews, grandparents. Do it with your grandkids. And I think it's just a fabulous, fabulous program. So hands are not for hitting, words are not for hurting. My hand will not commit violence. Take your pledge.
So we wanted to give you a little gift from Runway to Freedom, and it is a spin-off of that very program. And so I'm going to let Lauren present this to you.
Oh my God.
So this is from Runway to Freeway.
Oh God, I love you guys so cute.
Edges of it.
Oh,
So
I love it.
thank you. And
Oh gosh, I gotta hug you.
we'll hug,
Hold on.
but I encourage everyone to get involved in your family, sisters, brothers, kids, to do this project. It's really awesome to explain to your children what this is about and get that conversation started. Hands are not for hitting. And we wanted to
Absolutely.
present that to you. Fifi created it with Francesca, and we just wanted
Thank you.
to give it to you, and Jeremy as well. So we love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.